In part 1, we left off with the steps for completing the square. So let's go ahead and do an example. Suppose we have 2x squared plus 12x minus 4 equals 0, and we want to solve by completing the square. The first step is divide by a. Now if you recall, a is the coefficient for the x squared term. I need this number to be 1. For that number to be 1, I need to divide by 2. But I can't just divide the x squared by 2. I have to divide the x and the constant, and actually the 0 by 2 as well. If you divide 2x squared by 2, the 2's will cancel. You get 1x squared. That's good. That's what we're looking for. The 12x divided by 2, I get 6x. Negative 4 divided by 2, I get negative 2. And 0 divided by 2, remember, if 0 is on top and we're dividing by a number, you're going to get 0. So this is my new equation, x squared plus 6x minus 2 equals 0. Step 2, we want to put the constant on the right side of the equation. The constant is the one that's by itself. It does not have a variable attached to it. So the opposite of subtract 2x is add 2x to both sides. That will give me x squared plus 6x equals 2. Now, remember I said that this was kind of a fancy way for saying completing the square. Well, let's see how this would look when we actually draw the square. I do want you to draw the square. I don't actually want you to use this method. So my x squared has to go up here. We're only concerned with the left side for now. I have 6x, and that has to be divided evenly between this rectangle and this rectangle. So outside the box, I have x and x, a positive 3 and a positive 3. 3 times 3 is 9. 9, this number right here, the number in this box, I call it the magic number. That's the number that you're going to add to both sides of the equal sign up here. You're going to add 9, you're going to add 9. If we add 9, we have x squared plus 6x plus 9 on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, we have 2 plus 9, which gives us 11. Okay, so that's step 3. Step 4, we want to write the left side as a binomial squared. Well, we kind of already know the answer to that. We've already done that, so to speak. We know that this is x plus 3, and this is x plus 3. So that gives me x plus 3 squared. It still equals 11. From here, this should look familiar. We did this in the prior section. We're going to solve for x. That means we have to take the square root of both sides so that the square will cancel with the square root. Don't forget about the plus or the minus. That gives me x plus 3 equals square root of 11, and x plus 3 equals negative square root of 11. And if we subtract 3, our final answer. Let's do one more example. X squared plus 12x plus 11 equals 0. Divide by a. Well, that's already 1, so we don't need to divide by 1. So that step is fine. We don't need to do that. Put the constant on the right-hand side of the equation. So this is my constant. My constant is 11. It needs to be on the right side of the equal sign. It's a positive 11, so I'm going to subtract it. I have x squared plus 12x equals negative 11. Step 3, we want to complete the square. To complete the square, I'm going to have you draw the square. And x squared. Remember, we're just concerned right now with the left side of the equal sign. So the 12x has to be divided evenly between these two boxes. So 6x in one and 6x in the other. Outside, I've got x and x, a positive 6 and a positive 6. So the number I'm really looking for goes in the bottom right-hand corner. 6 times 6 is 36. So this number we're going to add here, and we need to add it here. Okay, so let me get a little bit of room here. Alright, so now I have x squared plus 12x. I'm adding 36. If you take a negative 11 and add 36, you get 25. Step 4, you're going to write the left side as a binomial squared. Well, we already have that information here. We're going to write x plus 6 squared is equal to 25. Now we're going to solve it just like we did in the last section. We're going to take the square root of both sides. Don't forget about the plus or the minus. The squared cancels with the square root. So I have x plus 6 is equal to plus or minus 5. Now to solve, you're going to let it equal to positive 5, and you're going to let it equal to negative 5. There is no shortcut for this. You do have to write it separately. I would tell you if you could do it in a quicker manner. You cannot. So we have x is equal to negative 1, and x is equal to negative 11. Remember, when you're solving a quadratic equation, when you have an x squared term, you will end up with two answers. You're always going to end up with two answers if you have x squared. Example 16, if I have x squared plus 16x plus 41 equals 0, need to divide by a. Well, there is no a to divide by, so we don't need to do that step. The constant needs to go on the right side of the equation, so subtract 41. I have x squared plus 16x is equal to negative 41. Complete the square, so draw the square. X squared, divide the 16x evenly. X, 8, 8. Positive 8 times positive 8 gives me a positive 64. This is the magic number. It's the number I'm going to add to both sides. Add 64. Add 64. So you have x squared plus 16x plus 64. This is equal to 23. Step 4, write the left side as a binomial squared, or x plus 8 squared. Take the square root of both sides, and remember the plus or minus. I have x plus 8 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 23. We're going to solve for the variable. Remember to write it separately. Plus 8 is equal to positive square root of 23. X plus 8 is equal to negative square root of 23. Subtract 8. Negative 8, positive square root of 23. Negative 8 minus the square root of 23. You would simplify the square root of 23 if it was simplifiable. And no, I don't mean a decimal. 23 is a prime number, so you don't have to worry about it. But if this was something other than a prime number, you would have to try and simplify it. Example 17, you're going to do just like the others. I will have you do this by yourself, but I'm going to get you a hint to get you started. notice my constant is on the left, but my x is on the right. Those actually need to switch places. So I need to add 18x because I need my x on the left-hand side, but I need my constant on the right-hand side, so I'm going to subtract 66. X squared plus 18x is equal to negative 66. I do want you to finish this one on your own. Let me know if you have questions tomorrow in class. 18, I'm going to have you work on your own. Example 19 is a little bit different. It says Milton showed the following steps using completing the square. In which step did Milton's first mistake appear? Fix a mistake and solve the problem correctly. So completing the square. Don't worry about the step numbers. Even if we labeled the step numbers differently, it's okay. Go by what we have. So even though I told you that the first step was to divide by a, and they didn't, that's all right. That's not the mistake. So just take a look at see what they actually did. So they have this, and they've got this. What did they do to get there? Well, they took the positive 24 and subtracted it from both sides. Is that legitimate? Yes, it is. So that's fine. No problem here. Okay. Now, what would you do next? Next, you would draw the box. X squared, 7x, 7x, 49. Well, they added 49 to both sides. That's fine. That's exactly what you do. Next step, they wrote it as a binomial squared. Well, x and 7, x and 7. That's fine. X plus 7 is fine. Negative 24 plus 49 is 25. That's fine. Nothing wrong there. The next step, so we had x plus 7 squared is equal to 25. Now we have x plus 7 without the squared. Well, what did they have to do that? Well, if you take the square root and do plus or minus, does that get you to the next step? Yes. That's nothing wrong with this. This is perfectly fine. So to get from step 4 to step 5, I've got a positive 7. Now I have a negative 7 on the other side. Well, if you subtract 7 from both sides, nothing wrong with that. That's fine. So I'm hoping that we have a mistake sometime soon, because so far we're at step 5 without a mistake. So let's take a look at step 6. It's got to be a mistake, so let's see what they did wrong. If I take x equals negative 7 plus 5, x equals negative 7 minus 5, I would get x equals negative 2 and x equals negative 12. Well, what did Milton get? Milton got plus or minus 2. So incorrect was step 6, and correct answer, negative 2 and positive 12. And that concludes section 5.9.